Picture this. It's late at night. The blue light of the TV is just painting your dark living room. You're completely exhausted, and you explicitly told yourself, I'm only watching 2 episodes tonight. But then, the credits roll. That 10-second countdown begins. And you just sit there. The next episode autoplays, and you keep watching. You're probably thinking to yourself, wait, why am I still doing this? It's a completely relatable scenario, right? But it actually opens the door to a really profound mystery. If you made the clear, conscious decision to go to sleep, but your body stayed glued to the couch, who is actually calling the shots?
And that exact question is at the center of this explainer. We're diving deep into the most complex machine in the known universe, your brain. This intricate 3-pound piece of matter somehow produces this incredibly compelling illusion that there's a single, unified you driving the bus. But as we dig through the research today, you're going to quickly discover that your sense of identity, your choices, and your feeling of absolute control, well, they're actually incredibly fragile constructs.
Section 1. The illusion of you. So, the vast majority of what happens inside your head is completely unconscious. It's acting a lot like a hidden puppet master behind the scenes. We all walk around feeling like we're the authors of our own stories, but in reality, there are these massive, hidden networks operating way below the surface. They manage everything from your heartbeat to your complex social interactions, and it's all happening totally outside of your conscious awareness. Just to grasp the sheer scale of this, think about this number. Your brain is made up of almost 90 billion neurons. 90 billion! And here's the truly shocking part. Scientists literally cannot find a single central command center in there. There is no one specific set of neurons that magically produces consciousness. Instead, the feeling of a unified self is distributed across this vast, dark biological cosmos. It's an illusion, born out of billions of tiny components just communicating in the dark.
Section 2. Glitches in the system.
Normally, this massive distributed network inside your head is a highly coordinated, well-oiled machine. But to truly understand how it works, scientists have to look at what happens when things glitch. When the brain's delicate symphony falls out of sync, the illusion of a single you starts to fracture in some really uncanny ways. Take sleepwalking, for example. We usually think of sleep as a time when we're completely powered down, right? But in some people, the brain regions responsible for highly complex behaviors, like walking, seeing, and maintaining balance, suddenly wake up. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for deliberate choices and self-awareness, stays completely trapped in deep, slow-wave sleep. There are actual cases where patients have navigated rooms, eaten meals, and one patient even perfectly painted a triangle on their kitchen wall. And they did all of this while their conscious identity was completely offline.
Now, if sleepwalking is a partial disconnect, anesthesia is a total blackout. When you go under for surgery, the drugs basically sever the communication lines between the different regions of your brain. The thalamus, which is the central way station roughly the size of a walnut, acts as your brain's information hub. When anesthetics hit, the incredibly dynamic, diverse electrical conversation of your waking mind is dramatically reduced to this dull, slow-rolling, unintelligible hum. You aren't just asleep, your very consciousness is disassembled.
And then, consider what happens during the ultimate disconnect, the split brain phenomenon. For some patients with severe epilepsy, surgeons actually sever the corpus callosum. That's the thick bundle of fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain. This operation effectively creates 2 separated minds inside a single skull. The left hemisphere controls speech and the right hand, while the right hemisphere manages visual space, emotion, and the left hand. And without that connecting bridge, they literally cannot talk to each other.
This exact scenario led to some of the most astounding experiments in the history of neuroscience. Researchers took a split-brain patient named Joe and flashed the word Texas so quickly that only his right hemisphere saw it. Now, because his right hemisphere can't speak, Joe verbally claimed he saw nothing. But when they asked him to draw with his left hand, which is controlled by that same silent right hemisphere, he confidently drew a cowboy hat. When his left talking brain saw the drawing, it was utterly confused, but it instantly invented a totally fake narrative to explain away an action it didn't even initiate. It turns out your verbal brain is constantly inventing stories to pretend it's in charge.
Section 3. Hidden puppet masters.
So if our left brain is just making up stories for actions it didn't choose, what else is pulling our strings? Well, we have to look beyond the architecture of the brain itself and step into the hidden biological forces of our emotions. Look at how we're physically wired for social survival. In behavioral economics games, scientists scan brains to see exactly why people choose generosity over greed, and what they found is fascinating. The insula acts like a thermometer, detecting these raw gut feelings of guilt when we consider harming or cheating someone. That signal is then sent straight to the prefrontal cortex, which acts as a thermostat to regulate our behavior.
Our emotions aren't just abstract, floaty feelings. They're highly evolved biological mechanisms designed to guide our decisions before we even consciously think about them.
And we know exactly what happens when that biological thermostat's destroyed. The tragic, incredibly famous case of Phineas Gage is absolute proof of this. Back in 1848, a massive gunpowder explosion launched a heavy iron rod straight through his skull. Miraculously, he survived. And not just survived, his memory and motor control were completely intact. But the iron obliterated parts of his prefrontal cortex. As a result, Gage completely lost his emotional filter. He became profane, erratic, and utterly disconnected from social norms. His personality, his morality, the very essence of who he was, it wasn't some separate, untouchable soul. It was biologically hardwired into the exact brain tissue he lost.
Section 4. Ghosts of our ancestors.
Now, the forces shaping you don't just stop at the edge of your own skull, or honestly, even within the timeline of your own life. Think about this. What if the choices you make today are actually dictated by events that happened before you were even born? I know it sounds like science fiction, but it's very real. It's called epigenetics. In one amazing study, researchers paired the smell of almond with a mild shock in adult mice. The trauma caused those mice to physically grow more cells in their noses, specifically tuned to the almond scent. But here is the real cinematic twist. Their offspring, who were never shocked and never exposed to the smell, were born with those exact same altered cellular receptors. The trauma literally rewrote the biological hardware of the next generation. We see echoes of this in humans too, like the descendants of the Dutch famine, who inherited metabolic changes directly from their starving grandparents. As neuroscientist Dr. Bianca Jones-Marlin beautifully notes here, society has long intuitively understood that generational survival and trauma echo through our family trees. But now, by peering directly into the glowing microscopic networks of the brain, science is turning that intuition into an undeniable, observable truth. You're not just the sum of your own experiences. You are a living archive of your ancestors' survival.
Section 5. The Agency Experiment.
Okay, so if our actions are influenced by divided hemispheres, hidden biological emotions, and the genetic ghosts of our ancestors' trauma, do we actually have any free will left? Are you the author of your own story? To test this, researchers brought a subject named Tomas into the lab. They hooked him up to a device using transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. By aiming a highly focused magnetic field at his motor cortex, the scientists could force Tomas's finger to twitch completely involuntarily. But at the same time, they recorded the tiny electrical signals from his brain to pinpoint the exact millisecond he internally initiated a movement of his own free will.
And here is where the illusion completely breaks down. When Tomas moved his finger normally, he felt full agency. No surprise there. When the machine forced his finger to move, he felt little to no agency. Also makes sense. But when Tomas perfectly initiated the movement himself and the researchers fired the magnetic pulse at the exact same time, Tomas claimed the machine did it. Let that sink in for a second. Even though he actively chose to move, the slight magnetic intervention completely shattered his belief that he was the author of his own action. Our sense of being in control is terrifyingly fragile. Ultimately, as this research powerfully highlights, the brain is essentially a relentless meaning-making machine. It looks at what the body just did, it factors in the environment, and it retrospectively builds a narrative to make sense of it all. It practically convinces you that you were in charge the whole time. It fills in the blanks to give you a sense of agency, because feeling in control isn't just a comfort, it's an absolutely vital survival mechanism.
Section 6. Beauty in Letting Go.
Realizing that we're largely running on autopilot can definitely invoke a bit of existential dread. I get it. But what if relinquishing this illusion of total control isn't a loss? What if it's actually the secret to unlocking our greatest human achievements? Consider the breathtaking neuroscience of freestyle rapping. When researchers put highly trained artists in an MRI scanner and had them recite memorized lyrics, their brains looked totally normal. But the moment they were given a random prompt and asked to improvise, something incredible happened. Their prefrontal cortex, that conscious, self-monitoring decision-maker we rely on so heavily, drastically deactivated. To achieve true, unscripted brilliance, they literally had to shut down their conscious mind and just let the unconscious networks take over.
This actually explains perfectly why professional athletes sometimes fail under immense pressure, a phenomenon we all know as choking. If you offer a basketball player $1 million to make a free throw, they suddenly inject all this conscious control and overthinking into an action they've practiced tens of thousands of times. They try to micromanage a movement that is far, far better left to the intricate, deeply learned dance of their unconscious mind.
It turns out we really do our best work when we just let go.
Yes, you are pushed and pulled by unseen forces, from genetics to society to deep biology. But that doesn't make you any less real. Embracing the fact that you are a multidimensional, immensely complex being driven by vast hidden networks, that makes you beautifully human. The unconscious you is still you. It's just vastly larger and more mysterious than the voice inside your head.
So as you go about your day-to-day, as you reach for a cup of coffee, choose a generous action, or even just sit on the couch deciding whether to watch one more episode, take a moment to appreciate the billions of silent neurons working in the dark to make it all happen. You might not be the singular driver you thought you were, but isn't the truth so much more fascinating? Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Keep questioning the world and, more importantly, keep questioning yourself.